Do you hear me?
Okay, then you can share screen.
Yes. 1 minute. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we see your screen.
Let's start. My name is Olga Danetsiev, and I would like to introduce you our work. The theme of the work is usage of artificial intelligence system and working with the neural network in assessing the conditions of plants in smart greenhouses. The paper proposed an approach to solving the problem of recognizing the states of plants using a neural network for use in information systems for monitoring and managing the microclimate for smart growing boxes and smart greenhouses. The developer smart greenhouse prototype is presented, which includes information technology for monitoring temperature, humidity, soil, and recording photo of the plants and future analysis of plants conditions using a neural network or, as someone says, deep learning. In addition, the groundboard interface is built for easier control light, temperature, and the other factors that create a favorable microclimate for a particular type of plants and manage through smartphone. The first main purpose is to adapt the algorithm of our system for training an artificial neural network using a GPU. In modern neural language processing, perhaps the most important approach is to build the models in through fine-tuning and pre-trained language models. In this work, the neural network was developed as a subsystem for assessing the conditions of plants in a comprehensive information technology for monitoring and control a smart greenhouse prototype. By the way, Stricha assessment of plants conditions based on photos for webcams. Bot human interaction interface for monitoring and management by Telegram bot. And Stricha voice smart greenhouse prototype control subsystem by the voice. A prototype of smart greenhouse was developed to implement information technology for monitoring and control. As a result of such realization, we have an opportunity to receive data on air and soil temperature and receive humidity. Record the models, the operation of outdoors for air ventilation, deep origination, and heating to enable the recommendation of current image of plants in this information technology, webcams, and servers for storing photo. In our case, it is Raspberry Pi, were installed for future work. The prototype itself contains temperature sensor, automated ventilation and heating, based on pre-collected data on a particular plant. An important element of the smart greenhouse is also watering, set for certain or days. In any process of work, development or research stages are usually outlined. When the project is divided into the certain defined tasks, the information is more convenient and issue-free. Neural network language begins with the preparation of the materials. The materials are usually marked image object. In our case, it's a photo that we will need to recognize. In this, it is with their help, the neural network is trained. In fact, this way of teach of neural network to analyze what exactly is depicted on the photo and the conditions of the object which is depicted. Brief characteristic of the plan which we used is temperature outside, temperature in room, temperature in box, in ground, and one of the main is if the lamp on or the light is off. The following tools are used to implement in our training process is Anaconda, which is common Python platform for data processing. Anaconda Navigator tool. It is a desktop user interface that is part of the Anaconda distribution and one of the most powerful language of programming, Python. During program development, the main package which we will use is Pandas, the FastE library, NumPy, and scikit-learn. It is the main libraries in our works. Transfer learning is a technique where we use the model trained on a very large data set and then adapt to your own data set. The idea of that it has learned to recognize many features on all of this data, and that you will be a benefit if your database is not very big when it is small. In practice, you need to change the last part of your models to be adapted to your own number of classes. Most convolution models end with a few linear layers. And training is not very long when it is on NVIDIA GTX 160, which consists of 6 GB of memory. It takes a couple of minutes for a single model. We get confusion matrix. That confusion matrix are provided for every target future, as it is shown on the slide. It's for light, for lifter states, and for humidity correspondingly. The neural network was adapted for the stupid data set, and the machine learning was performed using the deep learning network. And the corresponding realized learning results were obtained. On training, the available information technology of monitoring and management of a smart greenhouse prototype and an opportunity to receive conditions of plants on the basis of the photo from webcams placed in it was improved. In fact, the prototype has two directions for future development. The first direction it is for smart growing box, which can be placed in a house or apartment, and smart greenhouse, which are usually placed on land. In both cases, it will be important to implement the system for assessing the conditions of the plants on the base of proposed approach to the constructions of a neural network. In general, it's all. Thank you for attention.
Thank you. And any questions to the speaker? No questions. Thank you again. Then we should going to next speaker. Anna Bakurova, Ropava Hanna Tereshchenko Elina are present. We see Bakurova present. Are you listening to us? Dr. Bakurov. Meanwhile, we are going to next reporter.
Anna, we don't hear you. I see that Hanna Ropalo trying to say something, but we don't hear her.
Okay, okay. She tried to connect us. Maybe next time. Yuri Minaev, Oksana Filimonova, Yulia Minaeva. Are here? No. Then next. Kristina Berehovska.
Yes, yes, that's me.
Yeah. Oh, please, you have a voice.
One
now.
second. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we are.
So, good day, everybody. My name is Christina, and the topic of our research is a model and tools of adaptive control of a smart home system. One of the main characteristics of our time is a significant scientific, technological, and innovative progress, which is based on use of intelligent technologies. Smart home system is not a new concept. It was first introduced in 1992, and when the concept of a smart home meant the integration of various business services into the house using a common communication system. Currently, a smart home is a system capable of providing the user with a high level of convenience and comfort by automated decision-making to manage all subsystems of the house, taking into account all the individual characteristics, moods, habits, and wishes of each user of such system. Um, Today, a number of benefits that smart home system can provide have made them quite popular. So many scientists and companies around the world are researching such systems. The aspect that we focused on in our study is improving the comfort, the quality of people's life. By implementing the mechanism of action in advance and carrying out adaptive management of such systems. The model developed in the work is based on Petri-Markov nets, includes functional elements, and allow to take into account the prehistory of events and user behavior. It's implemented in the algorithm that can be described by the following steps. At the beginning, we determine the set of conditions for transitions of the smart home system from one state to another. Identify the set of events that can occur in the smart home system. Then we identify the functions that determine the relationships between events, the prerequisites for these events, and the post-event states of a smart home system. Establish a set of threshold values of the probabilities of events caused by activators. Set the initial marking, determine the initial probability distribution, determine the matrix of transient probabilities based on the probability distribution, define matrices, pre-incident, post-incidentially, and incidents. Next, we determine the control vector for the current marking. Take into consideration condition of event activity in marking. Identify the markings of the next step according to the equation of state. Determine the probability distribution at the next moment. And at the end, we check the achieving the condition for the implementation of the proactive action in advance. PetriNet is in this context served to reflect the dynamic, and Markov chains provide the opportunity to explore probabilistic processes and states that arise in the process of communication between user and the smart home system itself. To represent graphically the dynamic of system, the reachability graph can be used, which demonstrates the possible states of change of markings in the system of smart home. The key step of smart home systems developing is to determine its structure and the relationships between the main components. In particular, on the current slide, you can see the developed structure of information technology. This information technology includes four main components: input data generated by sensors, software and hardware, methods and models, and structured data that determines the source data that determines the signals to turn on or off a particular activator. For reaching our purposes, purposes of current work, the 8-bit microcontroller of STM8 family was used at the base. On this slide, you can see the implementation of a software product. This is the program that was developed on Java programming language. The main window of the developed automated software system of administration and forecasting. As the result of approbation, we used the coefficient of adaptation level and the deviation level from the script. From the diagram on this slide, we can conclude that the level of adaptation of the system increases with increasing training time. It can also be noted that the coefficient of deviation also depends on the time of experimental studies. On weekdays, working days, the dynamics of adaptation is faster due to routine of working days and a small number of possible scenarios for working days with the system. However, on weekends, when the number of scenarios is much greater, the adaptation of the system is slower. As the conclusion, we can say that mathematical model of a smart home system, which is based on Petri Markov nets, has been developed. Developed model allows to implement the process of adapting the smart home system to specific user, allows to explore the dynamics of systems working using marking vectors reachability graph. Proposed algorithm allows to implement the mechanism of action in advance and to carry out adaptive management of a smart home system. Information technology, the structure of which is developed in the context of this work, makes it possible to combine the hardware presented by physical elements, microcontroller, software, and user behavior. Using of Java programming language for this product in the long run will allow us to scale such system, use it in different platforms, and if necessary, expand the functionality. For the future possible extension, we consider that this model could be extended with a hardware component analysis for researching economic aspect of using this model for energy consumptions, investigation, and optimization. That's basically it. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions,
thank you very much.
Please go ahead.
I have a question.
Please, Dr. Galetsky.
Please, could you explain in more details which is the connection between Petri nets and Markov chains? I realized that both of them use the same set of states, but Markov chains reflect probabilities of being in each state, and Petri nets simulate the process of changing states. Am I right in such a guess or not?
Yes, thank you for question. Yes, you are right. This definitely that was that. So we use Petri nets for showing and showing and investigate the dynamic of the system works, and we use Petri chain, Markov chain here to represent this probability of changing the states. So this is like combination, symbiosis of two mathematical tools.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then we are going to next reporter, Anna Ropalva, are present here. Please, absent. Understand. She said that Anna Ropalva should Okay, then we ask Sergey Orekhov.
Yes, we're here. Can we share our
Please.
screen?
Dr. Orekhov. Please share screen. Вона мені написала в чаті.
Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, hello, dear colleagues. Let me present the results of our scientific work performed during last 11 years from our university, National Technical University, Kharkov Polytechnic Institute. The presentation structure has been depicted on the second slide. What is a semantic kernel? It is a set of keywords which annotate the real definition of a product in virtual space. Thus, a semantic kernel is described as an annotation of a piece of knowledge. Usually, at the very moment, we are embedding the kernel to website content. The simplest approach to considering the semantic kernel is to represent the source text as a bag of terms, which is subsequent clustering. As it was established, we should distinguish three clusters of terms: geography, product, and time. Slide number 3. We present the first attempt to describe the semantic kernel mathematically and algorithmically. The idea behind our approach is to have a bag of words by clustering terms into three categories to form the semantic kernel of a website. At the same time, we must understand that the kernel depends on time, or rather the version of web content that is contained in the content management system. For example, in the WordPress system, each web page has its own version at a given point in time. Further, the kernel depends on the marketing strategy followed by the seller of a product. Depending on the requirements of the strategy, the web content changes and accordingly the kernel. In our approach, we gradually combine the term A with index I and A with index Y, from the web content bag of words. When we form a new class, we then test the A with index F term for belonging. To assess the place in which the semantic kernel is involved, we consider the following business process. Slide number 4. A general outline for solving the problem is presented on the slide number 5. We propose to generate an XML file according to RDF schema, which will take into account both the terms themselves and the links to them, both on the web page and on the internet. The paper proposes a clustering algorithm, slide number 6. Its main difference is that you need to take into account overlapping terms as well as storylines in web content. This will simplify the semantic kernel as much as possible. This algorithm operates on the basis of the following mathematical models. Slide number 7. It is based on the following assumptions. First, we will assume that the kernel is formed by terms that belong to three dictionaries. Accordingly, there are dictionaries of the terms describing a product, time, as well as geography on the map. That is, we indicate where, when, and what product we want to sell or buy. To describe the semantic kernel, we introduce a vector n with 1 point that consists of 5 components. Each component, dpgm, is a coordinate of the term, which takes a Boolean value. 1 if the term is in the kernel, and 0 if not. A component L describes the presence or absence of a link to term on web page on the internet. One vector n is not enough to describe the kernel. We introduce 2 more vectors, n with 2 points and n with 3 points. The second vector with n with 2 points describe the terms synonyms to avoid duplication in the kernel. The third vector, n with 3 points, describes satellite terms to describe possible storylines in web text. To place a term in the cluster, or in other words, combine two versions of the kernels into one, we introduce three criteria for the union or proximity of kernel. Criterion 1 describes the union of kernels by vector n with 1 point. Criterion 2 by vector with n with 2 points. The third criterion is entered by the data and time of appearance of the term on the web page. The time difference between the appearance of two kernels should not exceed a certain threshold d, value d. Software was developed to test the specified model and algorithm. The functional requirements for the software operations are shown in slide 8. Slide 9 shows the main form of the software. The platform for the software development was chosen by JavaScript using the Node.js library on WordPost framework. As a test case for testing the algorithm, a web project on psychology and astrology from United States, slide number 10, was chosen. The web content of this site has been processed by its software. We compared the results of the formation of kernels with the data of Google Analytics. Slide number 11. The web content of this site has changed 3 times for the last 10 years. As you can see from Google Analytics data, each such change was accompanied by search and user activity. In the example, the semantic kernel was analyzed at the stage of its first change. The main task of the kernel was to fix in the minds of potential users of the site and the internet in general that this project's resting time and is associated with the direction of astrology and psychology. Subsequent changes to the kernel were aimed at the next 2 stages of marketing of this web project. The first stage, to promote the services of this website, namely the construction of a psychological portrait based on the user personal data. The second stage is to promote a new service, the School of Psychology and Astrology. In accordance with the stages, the semantic kernel of the website is also changed. Subsequent research of this topic includes development of an alternative approach to description of the semantic kernel. A promising idea is to represent the kernel in matrix form using the principles of permutations based on expert assessments of relationship between terms. In this case, the matrix contains the same elements as the search engine matrix. Then it is possible to use a vector space model to determine the proximity of kernel. In addition, it is promising to use a genetic algorithms to obtain an optimal semantic kernel on a set of existing or promising ones. Development and testing of software in this JavaScript language on WordPost platform. It is required to design this software as a component with the possibility of its integration into existing content management system, such as WordPress or OpenCart. Also, a promising area of research is the analysis of profiles in social networks in order to identify semantic kernels on their basis search for potential buyers of a product. So, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Orejo. Somebody has a question to Dr. Orejo connected with his report. No questions. Then thank you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues.
And we are going to next report. Natalia Boyko and Maria Yatsky, Human Operator Stress Assessment System.
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Okay, Maria Yatsky. But Dr. Orejo, please close your sharing screen.
Okay, let's
Okay. Yes, we see. We see and listen.
So, in the course of the work, the phenomenon of occurrence and course of stress was investigated, and special attention was paid to professional stress. In today's trend, Generation Z people suffer from physical stress. Although the literature contains several definitions of stress, it's clear that different forms of stress affect our mental and physical health. Stress is natural feeling that is, in some cases, helps the body protect itself. By their nature and origin, stressful situation can be related to the financial component, conflicts in relationships, or at work. Among the surveyed 2,108 respondents from Portuguese universities from all over the country, the results of the study showed that 34% of respondents showed sign of emotional exhaustion. 84% had sign of symptoms of lack of professional stress, and 6% showed impressionality. The study also found that between 6 and 34% of participants may have signs on the symptoms characteristic of burnout, showing moderate to severe burnout. So, slow metabolism, digestive problems, and the immune system are clearly the result of the effects of stress on the human body. And the purpose of this work is to create and develop an information system that automatically draws conclusion about the level of stress of human operator during the work shift and possible further participant in the decision-making process. Method and object of research. In the course of the work, the following methods were implemented for the study: decision tree, convince neighbor method, native bias classifier, and our own network that was written by Kherson. The object of the study was the human operator, his physical and mental performance in the event of occupation stress and after overcoming a stressful situation. So the statement of the problem. The analysis of behavior of the human operator in case of stress during the workday severely the process of developing a certain copy behavior to adapt as quick as possible to the requirements of the situation. And in the case of persistent stress, emotional burnout and exhaustion were recorded. Investigate the main stage of development of occupation stress and its impact based on activities of the human operator to detect its possible deflation and inability to participate in the decision-making process. Just as object of the study is the human operator, the subject of the study is the change in the physical parameters of the human operator and the speed of reaction, the time spent to solve the problem set by the developed system under the influence of professional stress. The values of all data are generated on the basis of publicity, available information on age, gender, and physical characteristics of individuals. Stressful situations are created artificially to test and improve the performance of the developed model. The values of all data are generated And before starting the work on the data, we carry out the preliminary processing, data preparation. The need to normalize data samples is due to the nature of the algorithms and models of machine learning use. Since there are columns in the existing data set, we find first the columns. Those values are duplicated. For example, fill is today yes and fill today no. And in the first step, we combine them into a single column with one. Also, the stage with non-values were removed. The target attributes is a level column where 1 is stress and 0 is stress-free. The size of the processed data is 1,180 tapes and the number of responses 92 people. In our model, we integrate two tests. Test 1 is true color word inference. In fuzzy logic, the effect of the scrap is called a reaction delay when reading word. When the color of the words doesn't mean the writing word. For example, the word red is written in blue, and in the standard version of the test, the subject is asked to read the name of colored words. This task is called word reading. In the second subtask is to write the color of the ink. And the next one is task to find a hidden object. The technique allows to access the concentration and intentiveness of the person. In the standard version of this test, it's suggested to find a hidden object drawn on the screen among other objects similar in shape or color. During the development of the processed model, the following method were implemented: is decision tree, native bias classifier, the method of convinced neighbors, and our own neural network using Kherson. In this figure, you may see a graph of accuracy of the model during training, and the results of the achievement during the development of the model are shown in this table. They show that the best accuracy is achieved in the model writing during Kherson. And in conclusion of the constant influence of stressors of the human mind, the decision can be ill-considered and made under the influence of emotion. In order to avoid such a situation in the workspace, the head of the enterprise should monitor the condition of the operator. To predict the stress of the human operator, the system was accessing the stress of human operator via development. The main task of the model is to predict on the basis of the obtained parameters of the human condition, so it's stress or not, and to improve the performance of the model based on input data of physical parameters like sex, age, height, bad habits. Additional test was added. The purpose of testing is to increase the accuracy of model prediction. So, thank you for attention.
40 minutes for questions. Yeah.
I have a question.
And we shall reconnect after this. Thank you.
I have
Speaker. Michael, Mikhail.
the interesting talk.
Maybe.
I was wondering about the different health effects of stress. Are you looking at stress in combination of negative effect or positive effect on the health? Because I read some research that stress can also be positive for health, like activity, and so are you looking at the correlation